The college football world training camp has begun too. USF started this week, also the Florida Gators up in Gainesville. And joining us on the show is Zach Goodall from Swamp 24/7. If you don't subscribe to their work already, you should, especially if you're a Gators fan. They got it all. Zach, welcome to the Nick Wize Show on a Thursday. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate you having me, and thank you for the plug over to Swamp 247. We're running a pretty great promo right now, so hopefully everyone heeds your word.
Yeah, what do you guys got going on over there right now?
So we're right now for the next little bit at least. There's a 60% off your annual subscription, as well as if you just want to try it out, we're doing a month for $1. So effectively, if you want all of the VIP fall camp coverage, literally up until I think the promo runs out the day the season would begin, you can get it for $1.
Perfect. Love it. Swamp 24/7. Great work over there. All right, Zach, before we get into this year's team, the quotes went viral from Dan Mullen yesterday. Just want your thoughts on that. He said, I think 3 out of my 4 years we would have made the college football playoff. Maybe that would have looked a little bit different back then with the resume, keeping me around a little bit longer to try and go win a national title. But hey, it is what it is. Probably hasn't gone well there since I left, it doesn't seem like. What'd you think of those comments from Dan Mullen?
You know, living in hindsight can be it can be sweet sometimes, I guess. I mean, I sure under the current rules, some of those teams probably, if not definitely, would have made the college football playoff. That does not change the way that he left the team. That last season was a clear indicator, I think, of where the team was going under his direction from a recruiting perspective. And yeah, those rules have changed too. Maybe he would, because I will give him credit. I thought he was a real innovator in the early days of, it wasn't even technically the transfer portal yet, but in the early days of aggressively pursuing transfers, he hit on a lot. So maybe that would have translated well too. But when it came to still recruiting the core of the roster, which even the most successful teams today, you still have to be able to go out and get it done on the high school recruiting trail. That really bore its ugly head, there at the end when we saw the quarterback that was, being developed for 3 years behind someone who finished, what, fourth in Heisman voting in Kyle Trask. And there's a lot of other examples that you could provide to show that just because maybe the team accomplished great things and in hindsight they could have been greater if the rules were different, doesn't change what happened at the end there, where it was going.
We're talking to Zach Goodall, Swamp 24/7 right now here on the Nick Wize Show. All right, let's talk about this year's squad. Fall camp underway, new era. Obviously, Billy Napier is gone, so we're now 2 coaches removed, really, or 1 coach removed since Dan Mullen. John Summerall era underway. What are the 3 biggest storylines for the Gators heading into fall camp this year?
It starts with the quarterback battle. I think obviously at this point, the fact that they've not named a starter and they really don't seem to be in a rush to do it. I think they've teased, whether it was facetiously or not, that they could take it into the season if they want. They could have a guy go out there, play week 1, and maybe give him a short leash. And if they don't think that things are going well, they'll go to the other guy because they have confidence in both. I think that's a little far-fetched. I think that it is going to end up being Aaron Philo, the Georgia Tech transfer. So we'll see how much of a leash he gets, but I think his experience playing for Buster Faulkner will extend that a little bit. So I think it's more important what they figure out at offensive tackle on both sides, because they don't have a clear-cut starter. I don't think at either spot. They've got Caden Jones returning, who has experience, but his play was very up and down in his first year as a starter. So they brought in other options, whether it's from the transfer portal and Egan Boyer and Amika Ugorji, who have both. Boyer's not played a ton in his career. Ugorji was a 17-year-old freshman at Stanford who ended up starting 8 games and really struggled, but as a 17-year-old in college football. You've got Fletcher Westfall coming off an injury. You've got TJ Dice, a redshirt freshman. Bryce Lovett got some time at tackle last year, wasn't that good. They moved him to guard. Now they're thinking he could play tackle again. You've just got so many options and so many unknowns, it seems, at tackle that one to me is like the quarterback play. Even if they get quality play out of either guy, it'll probably only go as far as the offensive line will take you, and the tackle positions being critically important there.
Yeah,
Third one. Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go with your third one.
I was just going to flip to the defense real quick. I think Florida's all in on Jayden Woods to become one of the best pass rushers in the SEC, if not the country. And I know that the box score stats may not indicate it off his freshman year, but the pressure rate was there, the pressures, the fact he was able to play 450 snaps as a 6'3", 250-pound weak side defensive end in the SEC. They did everything they could to make sure he came out of the transfer portal where he was ranked like the number 10 overall player. They've gone all in, and they really think that this sophomore surge they're anticipating of him is going to elevate him to near the top of that list. And quite frankly, they need him to get there.
Yeah, Summerall was talking before Gators fall camp, or I think he was talking actually before the spring camp. His two biggest concerns were the defensive line and the offensive line. And you kind of touched on both of them there. The offensive line battle at tackle, that's not what you want to hear going into camp, along with the quarterback battle between Aaron Philo and Tramel Jones. It is obviously Philo knows the system, playing for Buster Faulkner, Georgia Tech, a couple games while what's-his-face sat out due to injury a couple times last year. Is it going to come down to really who is more mobile, because this offensive line is such a question mark? And we were talking about it at SEC Media Days. The offensive line is really going to determine how good this team is, because they are the biggest question mark. But is mobility going to be a big factor of who the starting quarterback is?
I definitely think so, because, I think that they can both, Philo and Tramel Jones, be serviceable to average to maybe good quality quarterbacks based on the limited that we have seen from them and what you hear about them from behind the scenes in practice. I don't necessarily know if they're ever going to be world beaters with their arms. Like, neither was these top rated recruits with huge arms and great accuracy. Like, I think there's a ceiling there for sure compared to some of the other quarterbacks out there in college football who have yet to truly emerge, but seem to be on a path toward doing so, kind of like these guys are. Where mobility, that's a huge factor if you can offer it. And I think that both of these quarterbacks can do that in different ways. Being in this system, like you mentioned, stepping in for Haynes King multiple times, but also just practicing in it for 2 years, really should have, at least, and it sounds like it has, prepared Philo to be a decisive rusher, whether it's when a play breaks down, he's under pressure and needs to create on his own, or it's designed. And you factor in the questions at offensive tackle, there's a chance that he will be facing a decent bit of pressure if it doesn't pan out at either of those spots as well as Florida would like it to. So you've got to be able to go and create on your own. And it sounds as though he's really just kind of, I guess, again, been built for that because of the system he's worked in the last 2 years. But I don't want to sleep on Tramel Jones there either. He's not flashed that much in the mobility department from his playing time, but they're saying coming out of their summer strength and conditioning program that he has really increased his top speed. He's a bit, I don't want to call him scrawny, but he's a thinner quarterback. So the physicality part, I'm not entirely sure is there, but at least the speed has taken a step forward to where he's probably able to offer that in a different kind of capacity, but still offer it regardless.
Yeah, the couple moments he came in last year for the Gators, I'm like, this kid looks like he's still in high school, so he's going to definitely have to get a little bit bigger. Talking about Jones. Zach Goodall joining us, Swamp 24/7 here on the Nick Wize Show, talking about Gators fall camp, which was underway as of yesterday. What were some of the highlights from day number 1 here in the Summerall era of fall camp?
Yeah, so things have changed a little bit. We during spring camp we had the most access we've had to practices as long as I've been covering Florida. I mean, going back to, I came here in 2019 under Dan Mullen, and even before COVID changed everything, he was starting to shorten practices compared to where they had been in the past. So the 40-minute sessions we got in the spring were great. We're now getting seemingly 25 minutes, and I think those sessions are going to be less available compared to in the spring when we saw, I think, 10. So there's just not as much room for actual observations on the practice field. That's something I think Florida fans will have to kind of get accustomed to here as we go into the season. We might know less about the team than we were hoping to, just from being able to physically get out there and observe it. So with that in mind, I mean, we saw stretching and we saw special teams drills when we were out there on Wednesday. And the biggest takeaways I can come up with were the real lack of injuries. The team's healthy. All things considered, this is one of, I think, the most healthy Florida teams I've covered going into a season. There are only 4 players who weren't participating. I wouldn't necessarily consider any of them to be significant contributors to the team this year. And some of them seem like they're closer to coming back than missing more time. Like the tight end acquisition from Jacksonville this offseason, former basketball player Jalen Jordan, freshman safety Caden Hall. Those are 2 guys who appear to be closer to returning to practice than not. You look at Dijon Johnson, Tampa native. I'll shout that out.
Wesley
Knee
Chapel's
injury.
own.
That's right. Injury last year to his knee ended his season. He had to have a second operation on it after spring camp, and he was out there practicing fully. So that's a huge one. Fletcher Westphal, to bring up the offensive tackle position again. He missed all of last season due to a wrist injury and a hip injury. Both of them required surgery. As a result, he didn't do anything in spring camp. He was out there too, and now they're anticipating him being a part of this competition to start pretty quickly. And there's a lot of other examples of guys who were either limited or maybe didn't practice much throughout the spring or were sidelined on the last practice we got to see. All of those guys were back out on the field. So that's the biggest takeaway I could come up with from the 20 minutes we got to see, but I think it's a welcome one regardless.
Love it. Yep, and we saw Dallas Wilson back, which is good. I think he's going to have a monster season if he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
Zach Goodall, Swamp 24/7 is where you can find his work. Zach, appreciate your time. Always talking about the Gators, and we'll definitely have you on again soon. Good stuff, and thank you for coming on today. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Anytime. Zach Goodall, Swamp 247 or 20. I asked him, is it Swamp 247 or 24/7? He goes, I don't know. He goes, I think they prefer 24/7, so that's what we went with.
That's funny because I've always called it 247. Everybody I know says 247.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone knows. But that's where you can find his work. Good stuff there on the Gators. And coming up next here on the Nick Wize Show, we're looking for the best punishment in fantasy football. We're starting a fantasy football league here. We need a punishment for last place. What's the weirdest punishment you've ever seen for last place? 888-388-0957. We'll take your calls and your texts on that coming up next.